Hello, my name is Otis Landerholm. I'm an immigration lawyer and I fight for the rights of immigrants who are hoping to stay in the United States. Thank you for watching this video. This video is on how to file and win naturalization. Naturalization is the process of applying for U.S. citizenship. Thanks again for watching this. I'm going to break up this into two separate videos. The first video, I'm going to talk about how to be eligible for naturalization, really what the basics are, and then we'll go into more of the details about applying or about naturalization law and the eligibility. The second video then will be more on the application process, what forms to fill out, how to apply, some kind of tips on how to make the application as strong as possible. Okay, so we'll jump right in here and we'll talk about the eligibility process, or sorry, the eligibility criteria, and we'll get into it. Okay, so to be eligible for citizenship, you have to meet basically 9 requirements. First, you have to be a green card holder. All right, if you don't have a green card, then see the video on how to obtain a green card, or see the video on what are my immigration options. So first step for citizenship purposes is you have to have a green card. Second, you have to be at least 18 in order to go through the naturalization process. Third, you have to have good moral character for the past 5 years. Fourth, you have to read, write, and speak basic English. Fifth, you have to take and pass a test on U.S. civics and U.S. history. Sixth, you have to have maintained your residence in the U.S. For a period of 5 years, and that means that you can't have abandoned your residence, and it means that you can't have disrupted your residence during those 5 years. 7, you have to have been physically present in the U.S. for at least half of those last 5 years, or half of that time. 8, you have to have resided in the local USCIS district or in the state where you live for at least the last 90 days. And 9, you have to be willing to swear loyalty to the United States. You have to take an oath. Okay? So the first kind of nuance that I'll talk about are the exceptions to the 5-year rule. Okay? So the main exception is if you're married to a U.S. citizen, and if you have been married to a U.S. citizen for 3 years, you can apply for citizenship after 3 years, not 5. The marriage must be in good faith. You do have to document your marriage. And this rule also applies to people who got their green card through VAWA, through the Violence Against Women Act, if you were the victim of abuse by your U.S. citizen spouse. Okay? There's also a sort of exception that I want to explain for people that got their green cards through asylum or through refugee status. The law actually relates, it kind of gives you an additional year on your residence for when you apply for citizenship based on refugee or asylum status. In other words, when you get your green card as an asylee, they will automatically give you 1 year kind of added into that green card. And so then now when you're applying for citizenship after 5 years, you're not counting it as 5 years from the day that you got the card. It's 5 years from the date that they granted you residence from. It's typically 4 years after you get the card. You sort of have a 1 year head start. All right, and then the third exception to the 5-year rule is for certain military members. If you've been active in the U.S. military, you might be eligible to apply for citizenship immediately. You might not have to wait for the 5-year rule at all, depending on certain things. We can talk about that. All right. So the other issue that comes up with the 5 years, or the presence rules, is disruption versus abandonment. Okay, so the key is, have you traveled outside the U.S. and for how long have you taken your trips? Okay, so if each of your trips are less than 6 months, which I always recommend, if you're going to travel with a green card, don't travel for more than 6 months, and this is why, right? So if you've traveled for less than 6 months, it's not a problem. Okay. If you've traveled for more than 6 months but less than 12 months, so more than 6 months but less than a year, then the government's going to presume that you disrupted your residence, unless you show that you didn't. All right, and to show that you didn't, we've got to show, for example, that you maintained your home in the U.S., that you maintained your apartment, your residence, whatever in the U.S., that you kept your job here in the U.S. You know, we've got to basically prove that that trip of more than 6 months was not normal. It was not, basically, you didn't intend to leave behind your residence in the U.S. Okay? If the government finds that you disrupted your residence, then you have to wait 4 years and 1 day, again, from the day you got back before you can apply for citizenship. Okay? That's disruption. The more severe problem is abandonment. Okay? So if you abandoned your residence, or if the government thinks that you abandoned your residence, then they would actually give you a notice to appear in immigration court, and they could try to deport you when you come back in. So for abandonment, they are going to look at all kinds of things. Mainly, they're going to look at what your intent likely was when you left the U.S. They're going to look at the purpose of your trip abroad, the intended length of time, where you were working, whether or not you kept your job in the U.S., your ties to the U.S., whether you intended to return the whole time that you were out, and where your actual home was throughout the trip abroad. So if they determined that you completely gave up on your residence to the U.S., you literally abandoned your residence, then it violates the green card, and they will take it away from you, and they will deport you, or just send you to immigration court and try. Okay. So that's basically it for those topics. There are a couple special rules that I want to talk about for people who are U.S. nationals. People who are, for example, nationals of American Samoa can naturalize after living in a U.S. district or state after just 3 months. So they have a special rule. And then there are also special rules for U.S. military members. All right. So then the physical presence requirement, which is slightly different, is you've got to show, regardless of your trips, maybe every trip has just been a 5-month trip, but you've also got to show that you've spent more than 50% of your physical presence time. So if that's 5 years, you've got to show that more than 2.5 years of your time has been on U.S. soil. You've also got to show that you've lived 3 months in the district, okay, in the district or state. All right, so then next we're going to talk about the good moral character requirement, because this often comes up. So there are bars to showing good moral character. I'll just talk about them really quickly. So if you have been a habitual drunkard, if you have lots and lots of DUIs, for example, that can be a bar for citizenship, and a bar for good moral character. If you've been a practicing polygamist, if you've practiced prostitution, if you've helped other people, smuggle other people into the United States, if you've been convicted of certain crimes, if you've derived your income from illegal gambling sources, if you've made false claims to U.S. citizenship, and there are others as well, then you will be barred from showing good moral character. And there's warnings with this, because this could also potentially make you, quote-unquote, deportable. And so even if you have your green card, if you've triggered one of these grounds, they could potentially take your green card away and put you into deportation proceedings. So be very, very careful about applying for naturalization if you have any of those type of red flags. Okay. So then there are other bars to naturalization. So there are temporary bars, so you actually are barred from applying for citizenship if you're in removal proceedings. So you have to terminate or to administratively close those proceedings before you can get citizenship. There are also bars based on certain political crimes that may have been committed, or in Communist Party membership, totalitarian membership. Things like that can cause a 10-year bar to naturalization. Then there are bars for quote-unquote aggravated felons, you know, this is even if you're not deportable, you will still never be allowed to naturalize if you were an aggravated felon. Certain military deserters, draft dodgers, and alien smugglers, things like that, will be permanently barred also from naturalizing. Okay, so now we'll talk about the English language requirement. Okay, we're still on eligibility. So you have to show that you speak, read, and write basic English. The only exceptions are, one, if you're 50 years old and have had your green card for 20 years, then you can waive the English language requirement. And two, if you're 55 years old and have had your green card for 15 years. All right. And also, there are certain exceptions for people with mental or physical disabilities. There are ways also of waiving the English language requirement, but that disability has to be explained by a certified doctor and has to be signed on Form N-648, and it's a relatively complex thing to do. Generally speaking, you need to just step it up and learn the basic English requirement, and it really is basic. And if you're nervous about that, then my office can certainly help you understand exactly what's going to be asked of you, and help you with some study guides and questions. Okay. Then, of course, you also have to take and pass the history and civics test. There are about 100 questions that USCIS has. You have to answer 6 questions correctly out of 10 that you're given in the test. And if you don't pass the 6th, you'll be given a second opportunity. But yeah, there's 100 questions, and you can learn them, and we can help you learn them. There is an exception as well. If you're 65 years old and if you've had 20 years as a green card, then we can ask the government to give you an easier set of test questions with basically the 25 easier questions to study from, so that it's not quite as difficult. Okay? And then you have to take your oath of allegiance, is kind of the final requirement, and you'll be given this at an oath ceremony, which is the last phase of your citizenship process. Okay, for people who are conscientious objectors and really don't want to swear, because part of the oath is that you're swearing that you will be willing to take arms up on behalf of the United States if you're required to do so. If you're a conscientious objector, you're allowed to leave out the phrase that, quote unquote, I will bear arms, or that I will perform non-combatant services on behalf of the U.S. if required to. You are allowed to delete that from your oath if you are actually a conscientious objector. But regardless of that, those are basically the eligibility requirements, and hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you found that you are eligible to apply for citizenship, and if so, feel free to call my office. We can help you with the process if you want help. And if not, well, either way, please watch the second video of this series, which is on the application process, how to apply, how to make your application as strong as possible. And yeah, that'll be coming up next. So thank you very much, and hope you have a good day.